love you, Lord, for your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire. In darkest night, you are close like no other. I know you as a father. I know you as a friend. And I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. My life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything.
Welcome to church. Welcome home. I'm glad you came. If you remember nothing else by the time we're done talking about it, I'm hoping that you remember this verse. And there were shepherds living in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news of great joy for all people." Are there days when you feel terrified? And no, I'm not talking about the Broncos losing to the Dolphins, or worse, to the Jets. I went on to, I think it was the 9 News website, and I took a look at the headlines for the past week. Here are some of them. Man armed with knife forces closure of Hampden Avenue. I'm not sure how you closed down the whole Hampden Avenue, but he did. Burglary suspect injured in shooting. 3 people stabbed at Denver hotel. Lakewood police searching for person of interest in late September homicide. 16-year-old boy arrested in connection with deadly shooting at Southlands Mall. Greeley man injured, suspect found dead after reports of shooting. Denver police seek suspects in connection with sexual assault of a child. Aurora dentist accused of poisoning his wife. 2 shot in Denver's Gateway neighborhood. 2 shot in a road rage shooting. You should be terrified here in Denver. Come to Florida. And the world news, well, it's even worse. With the horrific tax and the indiscriminate, brutal killing of people in Israel. You know, it's been difficult to watch, but it's hard to escape the headlines of people killed, the stories of those who managed to escape, the pleas of a mother for a daughter who was taken hostage. And then there was someone who messaged me and they asked me, they said, "Do you think that Iran has a bomb?" And that someone else was wondering if maybe there was going to be a larger Middle East conflict drawing in Hezbollah in Lebanon and Iran. And then the financial markets last week, they opened, the stocks dropped, oil prices shot up because there was a lot of fear in the markets. This is how the world works. It brings terror, it brings disappointment, it brings death. Or in the words of Jesus in John 10:10, the thief comes only to steal and destroy. And in contrast to the world, Jesus has come to bring good news of great joy for all people. And that includes all of us here this morning. And again, Jesus, he says, "I have come that you might have life and have it to the full." And so that's what I want to spend some time to talk to you about today. And I'm just going to pick out 1 or 2 stories from each of the chapters, and we'll see how far we get before I get the signal to end. Mark 2. Once again, Jesus went out beside the lake. A large crowd came to him, and he began to teach them. As he walked along, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," Jesus told him, and Levi got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples, and there were many who followed him. When the teachers of the law, who were the Pharisees, saw him eating with sinners and tax collectors, they asked his disciples, "Why do you eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have come not to call the righteous, but sinners." It was late in my freshman year of high school when one of my teachers called me into his office after class, and he said to me, "Solly, even though you don't believe it about yourself, I want you to know I believe in you and that you will do great things." Wow. Never underestimate the power of someone believing in you. When someone believes in you, writes Tamer Ahmed, who's a performance consultant, he says it changes everything. Fear decreases, confidence increases, the bravery to aim higher and to take a leap grows. Small children who know that their parents believe in them feel supported. This often makes them fearless and willing to try anything without a doubt in their mind that they can achieve it. They dream big and imagine a future that's limitless. When someone believes in you, they illuminate your best qualities. When someone believes in you, they help you focus on your positives. When someone believes in you, they expect you to do more. When someone believes in you, it teaches you to believe even more in yourself. So Susan and Ann Wozniacki credit their mother's belief in them for their success. Susan became the CEO of YouTube, and Ann co-founded 23andMe. Sheryl Sandberg credits her mother for believing in her, and she became the COO of Meta. Mark Zuckerberg reportedly got $100,000 from his father to start Facebook. Michael Dell's parents offered him the seed money that he needed to start Dell. And Nike founder Phil Knight credits his parents for helping him start a billion-dollar company. People believed in them, and it changed their lives. And so it is with Levi. Now, most of us know Levi as Matthew. He's a tax collector. He's hated, he's despised, and thought of as unclean because he comes in contact with Romans. He's heard about Jesus, and he's even on occasion taken time off from work to go out and to listen to Jesus preach. We read in the Desire of Ages that he longed to be able to spend time talking with Jesus and seek help for the sinfulness that he felt inside himself. But he was too afraid to go to Jesus because he thought that maybe Jesus wouldn't be willing to talk to someone like him. So instead, Jesus goes looking for Matthew. And one day he looks up from his tax collector booth, and there in front of him is Jesus. And Jesus says, "Levi, I believe in you. Come, follow me." And Ellen White writes that he was as astonished by this call from Jesus as everyone else that was around him. And what is the first thing they do? They go to his house, they eat with other tax collectors and sinners. And then this amazing thing happens. All of these tax collectors and sinners that are gathered together in the house, they are surprised by the fact that Jesus would believe in them. And listen to what happens. Jesus' sympathy and social kindness showed that he recognized the dignity of humanity, and men longed to become worthy of his confidence. Upon their thirsty hearts, his words fell with blessed, life-giving power. New impulses were awakened, and the possibility of a new life opened to these outcasts of society. And when the Holy Spirit was poured out, and 3,000 were converted in a day, there were among them many who first heard the truth at the table at Matthew's house. And some of these became messengers of the gospel. Why? Because Jesus believed in them. Never underestimate the power of someone believing in you, because God believes in you. You are not just pardoned criminals. You're heirs to a kingdom. You're co-heirs with Christ. Think about that. God's kingdom is not some sort of preordained authoritarian kingdom that lives by his decrees. God is not insecure. If you look at that throne scene in Revelation chapter 4, God is in constant contact with these creatures and these elders, and these angels. And God will turn to Abraham and to Moses and to Aaron and ask them for their advice and for their feedback. And he takes their counsel even when they question him or disagree with him. God has great plans for you. He believes in you. In him, you can be fearless, willing to try new things without a doubt that you can achieve it. Because he believes in you, you can dream big and live an eternal future that is limitless. And he calls you always forward to bigger and greater things. Mark chapter 3. Unlike the man with leprosy, or the man who's possessed by the evil spirit, or the man who's let down through the roof by his friends, there is no urgency in the miracle that Jesus is about to perform. He could have done it on a Sunday, or he could just never have done it at all. But he's about to perform a miracle that will exact a great cost on him. Let me read it for you. Another time, Jesus went into the synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. So they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Stand up in front of everyone." Then Jesus asked them, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill?" But they remained silent. He looked around them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, and said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and the hand was completely restored. Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus. Unlike many who had sought out Jesus for healing, we find this man who just went to the temple on Sabbath and has this encounter with Jesus that brings joy into his life. He doesn't seem to have any expectation of getting healed. There seems to be no faith on his part or any understanding of this discussion that's going on between Jesus and the Pharisees that was going on as a result of his disability. If he was like most of us this morning, he was probably unhappy about the fact that he had somehow got caught up as a prop in this conversation. Now, how would you like it if in the back row over there, if I randomly called on one of you today and asked you to stand up and then tell you to talk about your disability that you have? And it may not be a visible one like this man had, but we all have them. And for the most part, we want to keep them hidden and not brought out in front of the whole church. And here is Jesus. He does just that. He asks the man to stand up. And worse, he asks the man to show his withered hand for all to see. And then as the man stretches it out, suddenly the withered sinew and muscles begin to rip and bulge. And the bones, I imagine, started to make this crunching noise. And through his pulse over here, suddenly blood started flowing through it again. And his fingers straighten, and his hand is restored. Mark 4. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let's go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. The sun had set. The darkness of the night had settled over the boats when suddenly a furious squall came up and waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Many of the disciples were fishermen and had a lot of experience dealing with storms, and they just immediately must have sprung into action to save themselves. Matthew was a tax collector, a guy who lived on land. I'm betting that right around this time, he might have had some doubts about following Jesus because he could see the fear on the faces of the other people. Now, if you read Matthew's account of this miracle, it's much more compelling to me than the one in Mark. And all their strength and all their experience and all of their skill is not enough. And they are helpless in the grasp of a storm. And as the boat fills up, their hope fails them. Absorbed in their efforts to save themselves, they had forgotten all about Jesus and that he was on board. And the boat is starting to go down, and they realize, this is it. We're going to die. My mother had a stroke once, and she tells me that as it happened, that's what she said to herself. She said, this is it. I'm about to die. And then she said she remembered nothing until she woke up in the hospital. Only as they were facing death, that they remember that Jesus is on board. And then, like we spoke last time about John the Baptist, they have serious doubts about Jesus run through their minds. Had Jesus forsaken them? Was he who had conquered disease, rebuked demons, raised the dead, powerless now to help them? Was he unmindful of the situation that they were found in? And then Matthew records that they said, Lord, save us. We are perishing. Ellen White has this great line in her telling of the story. She says, never does a person utter the cry that the disciples uttered, Lord, we're perishing, save us. Never does that uttering go unheeded by Jesus. Isaiah 42 verse 3 says, a bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. Matthew 11, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And as they grab their oars for one final frenzied, failing attempt to save themselves, Jesus gets up and he rebukes the wind and he says to the waves, quiet, be still. And the storm stops. The waves sink to rest. The clouds roll away. The stars shine out. The boat rests on the quiet sea, and it's completely calm. According to the Desire of Ages, not even Peter had anything to say. And their fear was forgotten, and they whispered among themselves, who can this be? Even the wind and the waves obey him. And Jesus brings joy to the disciples. He brings joy to all of those in the other boats that were following. And he'll bring joy to you in the storms you face in your life. Mark 5. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, my little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hand on her, that she will be healed and live. So Jesus went with him. On a Sunday morning just a few weeks ago, I got a text message, and it said, hi, Solly. I want to let you know we have a family emergency that's pretty serious. Our son is in the ICU at Denver Health. Any prayers you guys could send our way would be great. So Janelle and I, we prayed for him, and I sent Tammy a message, and I said, Tammy, please ask the prayer team to pray for them. And thank you for those of you who are on that prayer team who prayed for them. And Jesus is delayed on his way to Jairus' house by a woman who touches his garment, and he's talking to her, and while he's talking to her, the news comes, your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore? 2 days later, my friend texted me to say something very similar. He said things are not good. He had just spoken to the doctor and that his son wasn't going to make it. And then early that Wednesday, his son died. And Jesus' words to Jairus are still true today. He says to him, don't be afraid, just believe. Why? Because death is no longer the final frontier. Death is no longer the ultimate unknown. And I say this as someone who has lost friends and family. Before Jesus, death is unknown. after Jesus, now it's just asleep. And Jesus brings joy to the family of Jairus. And even in every death that you've experienced, we can still share in that joy when the perishable has been clothed with the imperishable, and the mortality with immortality. Then the saying that is written will come true. Death has been swallowed up in victory. Oh, death, where is your victory? Let's look at one more. It's a 2-for-1 really, so I'm kind of cheating. But in Mark 6, we have the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. Now, really, it was 5,000 men, so there were a lot more people there. There were probably at least, maybe 5,000 women, so we're at 10. Then you think of all the children, maybe 12, 13,000 people. It's getting late at night, and Jesus tells his disciples to feed the people. But out of the massive crowd, they go around and they're looking for food. Out of 12, 13,000 people, all they can find is 5 loaves and 2 fish. And they come back to Jesus and say, it will take half a year's wage to feed all of these people. Not going to happen. How satisfying is it when you're really hungry, when this church service ends, and you get to go home or to a restaurant, and you have a great meal? Well, that's the way it is for them. Jesus brings them joy and sends them home with bags of leftovers. And then in Mark, we read the story of Jesus again feeding 4,000 men. So, I don't know, maybe 8,000, 10,000. Here's what makes the story so interesting to me. In the second story, it's as if the first story had never happened. In both of these stories, there are a lot of people who are hungry. In both stories, Jesus tells the disciples that they should feed the people. In both stories, the disciples are incredulous that Jesus would suggest that such a thing was possible. And they tell him that there's no way that they're able to feed that many people. Now think of everything that they've been through. They've seen blind given their sight. They've seen demons being cast out. Lepers have been healed. The lame have regained their footing. The maimed have had their hands given back to them. A group of 5,000 have been fed, and the waves on the sea have been quieted. And now Jesus says to them, feed the 4,000. And they're incredulous that it can happen. But I don't judge them too harshly, because how often do I quickly forget that Jesus is working to bring joy to my life as well? Just going to put up a slide on the screen. On the screen, you'll see the lady over there. That's Jin Fori. And next to her is Lepshala Mapashela. Almost 30 years to this very month, a group of us were in college, and we were graduating soon. And we decided one Saturday evening that we would go to a place in Cape Town called the Heidelberg Bar and Grill, because we'd heard that there was always good live music there. And so a few of us got together, and one of those that got together was Lindy Fori, Jin's daughter. And we went to the Heidelberg Bar and Grill, and I don't really remember much about it. I think we got there, and there weren't any bands playing, and we left shortly after that. And then I graduated, and I left the country. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, somebody sent me a message, and they said that Lindy had gone for a New Year's celebration to the Heidelberg Bar and Grill. And 10 minutes after she had gotten there, 3 men with AK-47s had rushed in, and they had opened fire on everybody inside, and that she had been literally cut in half by the hail of bullets and died almost instantly. After a funeral, or at the funeral, Jin got up, and she forgave the men who had killed her only daughter. And then years later, when the man who had ordered the attacks, the commander of the Azerian People's Party, Lepshala Mapashela, released a book, she went to the press conference at the book release, And she got up and she identified herself as the mother of one of the people who had been killed in that attack. And then she started working with this man on something called Project Forgiveness through the Lindy Foree Foundation. As improbable as it sounds, this really happened. I treasure that brief time that I knew Lindy. I am proud to call Jen a friend. In the challenges that you face this week, may you be healed like she was by the goodness of God. May you be renewed by the joy, the great joy that Jesus brings.
Every evening sky, an invitation to trace the patterned stars. And early in July, a celebration for freedom that is ours. And I notice you in children's games and those who watch them from the shade. Every drop of sun is full of fun and wonder. You are summer. And even when the trees have just surrendered to the harvest time, forfeiting their leaves in late September and sending us inside, still I notice you when change begins, and I am braced for colder winds. I will offer thanks for what has been and what's to come. You are autumn. And everything in time and under heaven finally falls asleep, wrapped in blankets white, all creation shivers underneath, and still I notice you when branches crack, and in my breath